What is up, Broncos fans? The Denver Broncos show back here again to recap draft day number 2 for the Denver Broncos. Of course, rounds 2 and 3 were last night. The Broncos once again stayed pat, didn't trade up or down, let the board kind of fall to them, and honestly thought they did a much better job in day 2 than in day 1. I left day 2 a lot more positively and a lot more satisfied than I was after day 1 as a Broncos fan. So let's get into these 3 players that the Broncos selected. Starting at pick number 51 in the second round, the Broncos took DeMarcus Walker, defensive end out of Florida State, 6'4", 280 pounds, 22 years old. I like this pick a lot. You look at DeMarcus Walker, he was the ACC Defensive Player of the Year last year. The last 2 seasons at Florida State, he's had 37 tackles for loss and 26.5 sacks. You love that production that he's shown, especially as a pass rusher during his junior and senior seasons as a Seminole for Florida State. DeMarcus Walker is a guy, he's listed as a defensive end, but I would expect him to play inside quite frequently, primarily on passing downs, because I do think he's going to be a guy that we look to utilize mainly as an interior pass rusher, and I think that's what this pick was mainly for, is to add an interior pass rushing presence to kind of free up some things on the outside for the likes of Von Miller and Shane Ray. Breaking DeMarcus Walker's game down, you look at him, he's got a really good swim move. He's really quick with that. This is a guy that doesn't give up when his initial pass rush move is shut down. So this is a guy that has a nice pursuit to the ball and has multiple moves. He's not a guy that just has a rip move or a swim move. He can go to a plethora of different options. So you like that. He's a guy that, you know, he doesn't just get stifled at the point of attack and give up. He keeps going. He keeps pursuing the quarterback. He's good at mirroring the quarterback, squaring up to the quarterback when he's stifled, and batting throws down at the line of scrimmage. So you'd like that added value to him. This is a guy that you expect next year will bat down a couple passes at the line of scrimmage. And again, as I mentioned earlier, the thing you love about DeMarcus Walker is he has that versatility and ability to play inside, which is primarily where I think the Broncos are going to line him up a lot, again, in pass rushing situations. Again, this is a guy that is an interior pass rushing presence that we desperately need, and that we kind of haven't had since losing Malik Jackson a couple years ago. And another thing I really like about DeMarcus Walker is he's a stout guy. He's 6'4", 280 pounds, but he's got the frame to where he could still add another 5, 10, maybe even 15 pounds and really kind of add some bulk to his frame, which would make that transition to kicking him inside even more natural and make that a little more easy for him as well. And you love this guy's durability, and he's got a good motor. I like that this guy is on the field for a majority of the time. Again, a real durable guy is DeMarcus Walker. And again, I think he's got a good motor, but he definitely does have an inconsistent motor. His conditioning is something that he'll have to work on over the offseason. And he's not the guy that is the most natural pass rusher. He doesn't have the best first step. He doesn't have the quickest first step. He's not Von Miller in terms of his get off. He's a fluid athlete, but he could be more sudden, so to say. Again, he doesn't have the quickest first step. He's not a Von Miller. He's not a Shane Ray. He's not built in that mold, again, as a pass rusher. But I do like the fact that we added this guy, because, again, you know, we already are great at getting to the quarterback. We ranked 3rd last year in sacks. We had 42 sacks as a defense last year. But Shane Ray and Von Miller had 21.5 of those 42 sacks last year. So they had more than half of your team sacks. Adding a guy like DeMarcus Walker, who you can bring in to be a complementary pass rusher to those 2 guys and take some of the pass rushing burden off them, I think is huge for us going forward. And again, this is a guy that will kick in inside primarily and give you an interior pass rushing presence. You want him to collapse that pocket up front to make things easier on the outside for not only Von Miller and Shane Ray, but also for a guy like Shaq Barrett, a guy like Derek Wolfe, so can free up some things on the outside for them. Another thing I really like in adding DeMarcus Walker is this is a guy that primarily is going to be used, again, in passing downs and passing situations, because he's going to primarily be used as a pass rusher. This is a guy that is not going to help you a whole lot with your run defense, but you already addressed that somewhat in free agency and bringing in Domata Peko and, of course, Nick Kerr. at the defensive tackle spot. Those are guys that are mainly going to play on first and second down and really help you in terms of eating space and filling gaps in the run game. But then you add a guy here in DeMarcus Walker, who's a guy that's going to come in on third down situations, again in passing situations, play that 3-4 defensive end spot for you, kick him inside sometimes as well, and be that interior pass rushing presence that you desperately need and that you want. So I really like the way this guy complements the other two defensive linemen in Pecco and Kerr that we added in free agency, and I think those two guys help in the run. He helps in pass rushing situations. I think it's just kind of the best of both worlds. So I really like this pick at number 51. Broncos, their second round pick this year. DeMarcus Walker, defensive end out of Florida State. Funny how we just went from DeMarcus Ware to DeMarcus Walker. Really excited to see what this kid does start next year. And again, really think he's going to be a nice complementary pass rusher day one and really help free up some things on the outside for Von Miller and Shane Ray. All right, talking about the Broncos' next selection, we came back in the third round at pick number 82 after taking DeMarcus Walker in the second round at pick number 51 and took Carlos Henderson, wide receiver out of Louisiana Tech, 5'11", 199 pounds, 22 years old. I'm thrilled with this pick. This is the pick the Broncos have made that I probably love the most so far in this year's NFL Draft, 2017 NFL Draft. In my preview, and I've been harping on it quite some time, the Broncos need to add playmakers, whether it was on the offensive side of the football or the defensive side of the football. They needed to add some playmakers, but primarily on the offensive side of the football, we needed to add some juice, we need to add some speed, and boy did we accomplish both of those things here in adding Carlos Henderson, again, wide receiver out of Louisiana Tech. You look at what he did last year. He was the Conference USA Offensive and Special Teams Player of the Year in 2016. During his career at Louisiana Tech, he compiled 147 catches for 2,878 yards and 28 touchdowns. 19 of those 28 touchdowns came last season for him. He had a monster year last year. And also during his career at Louisiana Tech, he compiled 2,094 return yards and had 3 kick return touchdowns. So you like that the Broncos address the need in terms of adding a return man here. This is a guy that I would expect day one to not only start as our return guy, whether it's punt returner and kick returner or one or the other. He's a guy that should compete for that starting job day one and honestly ultimately win it. No disrespect to Jordan Norwood or anyone else that's competing for that job, but this is a guy that really brings that dimension that you've been missing in your special teams again with the return man. And this guy, I mean, you're talking about a real shifty, speedy athlete. Look at what he did at the combine. He ran a 4.46 40. You love that. A 4.35 20-yard short shuttle. Had a 36-inch vertical jump. A 10-foot 9-inch broad jump. Again, is a credible returner. You love the value that he adds as a return man. Broncos last year had 0 touchdowns that were from kickoff returns or punt returns. The Broncos ranked 30th last year in all-purpose yards. Again, this is a guy that will hopefully address both of those areas of need and again give you some juice in the return game and really should be your kick returner and your punt returner probably from day one and compete for that starting job day one and be the favorite to land it. You look at Carlos Henderson, this is a guy, he has that top end speed to be a vertical threat, something our offense could definitely utilize. This is a guy that he can take the top off of opposing NFL defenses. He can get away from defensive backs and safeties. Again, he has that vertical breakaway speed that you want to see to get down the field and again give the Broncos a threat that can take the top off of opposing defenses. And the Broncos last year, you look at the Broncos, this was a team that lacked big plays. I already mentioned, I think we were tied dead last year for most runs of 20 yards or more. We only had 4 runs last year of 20 yards or more. But we also lacked big plays in the passing game as well. The Broncos tied for 26 last year in passes of 20 yards or more. So we really didn't have a whole lot of passes down the field. Again, a lot of that had to do with inexperience at the quarterback position, but and play calling, sure, but you didn't have a whole lot of vertical threats outside of Emmanuel Sanders. DT obviously has got great speed, but he's very inconsistent in terms of his ability to make guys miss and get down the field. Emmanuel Sanders was kind of your only consistent vertical threat. You had Carlos Henderson. He's a guy also, again, should help you in that area. This is a guy that had 8 catches last year for 50 yards or more. That led college football last year. Again, Carlos Henderson had 8 catches of 50 yards or more in 2016 for Louisiana Tech. Again, the Broncos tied for 26 last season in passes of 20 yards or more. So he's a guy you would hope would help that, and again is going to help you a ton in the return game. He's a natural hands catcher. You love that. And the thing I love about this guy is he competes in terms of run after the catch, yards after the catch. He is a smaller receiver, again, 5'11", 199 pounds. But he's feisty, he's tough, he's a guy that he's got that shiftiness, he's got that speed to make you miss initially, slip that initial tackle. He can slip tacklers, and then has that feistiness, that toughness, and again the ability with the run after the catch ability, the yards after the catch ability to make a second guy miss or even a third guy miss. And again, you love that toughness. Even though he's a smaller guy, he has that ability to make multiple guys miss, and again finish plays and has some run after the catch value, which you love. And he's also got value in the screen game. Bringing in Mike McCoy, obviously he loves the screen game, loves the bubble screens. This is a guy, Carlos Henderson, a la DT. I'm sure he'll be utilized a lot in screen situations. And again, he's small, 5'11", 199 pounds. But the thing I love most about this guy is he's feisty, he's tough, and he's a competitor. This is a guy that is a good blocker, but more importantly, he's a willing blocker, okay? So he's a good blocker, he's feisty, he packs a punch at 5'11", 199 pounds. So he'll help you in the run blocking again, in terms of getting C.J. Anderson and Devontae Booker when you kick them to the outside. This is a guy that 199 pounds will compete and set that edge for you in the run game, and packs a heck of a punch in the blocking game again at 5'11", 199 pounds. But the thing I love the most about adding this guy is, again, you add some speed, you add a dynamic playmaker on offense, which you so desperately needed. You add a guy who's a great returner when you obviously were awful last year in terms of special teams and in the return game. And again, you had no vertical offense really, and no vertical passing game really last year. This is a guy, 8 catches of 50 yards or more last season. He should help you in that regard. But there's some things to definitely improve on for Carlos Henderson. Again, he's got that prototypical vertical, top end speed, but he's a guy that doesn't always play at that top end speed, so he needs to work on that. Definitely needs to work on his route running. This is a guy that is too reliant at times on his agility and speed, so polishing that up, working on that with Tyke Tolbert, I'm sure he'll be fine. I've total faith in Tyke Tolbert will polish up his route running ability. And he's got to get better at working back to the ball, something he's definitely going to have to work on, especially with our two quarterbacks in Paxton Lynch and Trevor Siemian. And he has some focus drops at times, some mental mistakes. Again, those are all things you can teach and clean up, but you just got to love the production of this guy. This is a guy also last year had a game against the University of Massachusetts last season where he had 13 catches for 326 yards and 5 touchdowns. Not exaggerating. Again, had a game last year with 326 yards and 5 TDs. Great vertical threat. Adds a playmaker to our offense. Adds some juice to our offense, and again is a great return man. Adds some juice to your return game, and has some juice as a return man. Some electricity as a return man. Something we desperately need. Just really thrilled with this pick. Great value too. I think at pick number 82 in the 3rd round. Carlos Henderson, receiver out of Louisiana Tech. My favorite player we've picked so far. And I am thrilled to see how Mike McCoy and the Broncos offense utilize this guy next season. All right, and now to the last guy I'm going to talk about that the Broncos drafted, of course, in day 2 of the 2017 NFL Draft with the 101st pick in the 3rd round. We took Brendan Langley, defensive back out of Lamar, 6 foot, 201 pounds, 22 years old. Like this kid a lot. Definitely a developmental corner. You look at his game and his backstory. Brendan Langley, this is a guy who transferred actually from Georgia to go play at Lamar. He initially at Georgia was a receiver, I believe. They wanted him to play receiver. He wanted to play defensive back one more time, so he transferred to Lamar his junior year. And clearly it worked out for the guy. Look at his 2 seasons at Lamar. He had 18 pass breakups, 7 interceptions, in those 2 seasons at Lamar. Also had 2 punt returns for touchdowns. So again, with Carlos Henderson, you had a great returner. You also had a guy here in Brendan Langley who's got some value as a return man and adds some juice to your return game. I love seeing that. But this guy is very much a developmental cornerback. He's a guy that has great length and speed, has all the physical traits you want. He's got great size for the position. Again, has elite speed for the position. This guy, he ran a 4.43 40 at the combine, ran a 4.21 20-yard short shuttle. I believe that was faster than Christian McCaffrey. So you're talking about a guy that's got elite quickness. Had a 35.5-inch vertical jump, 22 reps on the bench press as well for a defensive back. That's pretty impressive. And then had a 10-foot 2-inch broad jump. So had a pretty impressive combine. Again, has value as a return man. This guy's got a really disruptive punch in press coverage. Is great at jamming receivers up at the line of scrimmage, and has that size and strength. Again, 22 reps on the bench press to really disrupt guys at the line of scrimmage. Great ball skills. Again, former wide receiver. Not only in high school, I think at the University of Georgia. And again, that's very evident by his production at Lamar the last 2 seasons. 18 pass breakups, 7 interceptions. Again, this guy's got great ball skills, does a great job of really attacking and catching the ball at its highest point, which is a must if you're a defensive back at the next level. And again, he's your prototypical corner in terms of his length, his speed. He's got great length and speed, 32-inch arms, and again, is very raw, very a typical developmental defensive back, but a prototypical one in terms of his size, and he's very moldable, man. And I think he's coming into a great situation. Again, there's things about him that need to improve. He needs to improve his footwork. His back pedal is very choppy. He definitely needs to improve his technique in press coverage and jamming receivers at the line. He's got that power and that punch to really stifle him, but being more technical with his hand placement, that could definitely improve. And mirroring wide receivers, improving his awareness and awareness of the route tree, and mirroring receivers, again, that's something to improve on, and also could get better as a tackler and improve his willingness as a tackler and being better in the run support. Those are things that he can improve on. So again, this guy's very much a project, but again, he's coming into a great situation. He gets to learn behind and play with, and alongside Aqib Talib, Chris Harris, Bradley Roby. He gets to compete next to a really good young corner as well, and Lorenzo Doss. I really look forward to the competition these two are going to provide for each other and their growth as young defensive backs together. And again, you look at who we just hired or promoted as our new defensive coordinator, Joe Woods. This is a guy who's our former defensive backs coach. He's known for developing defensive backs. I think it's just a great situation for Brendan Langley, and I think Joe Woods and the rest of the guys I named will do a good job of really grooming Brendan Langley, taking them under his wing, and then him compete next to Lorenzo Doss, those two growing together. I think it's just a great fit. So really happy to have Brendan Langley. And this is a guy, he'll be a core special teams player for you day one. He'll compete on special teams, and again, if you're planning on using Carlos Henderson, of course, on offense and using him as a third or fourth wide receiver more and playing him more snaps offensively and in the screen game, then Brandon Langley is a guy also that can definitely play the return, be the return man for you, be a returner for you. He has added value there, so like adding him as well. Thrilled to have DeMarcus Walker, Carlos Henderson, and Brandon Langley as the 3 newest members of the Denver Broncos. Excited to see if these guys can break the trend of the Broncos having unproductive second and third round picks. As I mentioned in my video yesterday, John Elway, since being named the president of football operations for the Broncos, has had 14 draft picks in the second and third rounds. He's taken 14 players with those picks. None of them have made the Pro Bowl, and half of them aren't even on the current roster. So be interested to see if these 3 guys, and even last year with Justin Simmons, and who knows about Adam Gotsis, if this is now the last two years are a trend in the right direction of Elway becoming a better drafter in the second and third rounds, because I think he's got a good crop here and a good chance to have some productive players. DeMarcus Walker could be a real nice complementary pass rush for us, especially inside. Carlos Henderson, I think, is just a great playmaker, dynamic playmaker we really needed. Going to do a lot of things in the screen game, going to be a great return for us, vertical threat down the field that we so desperately need. And Brandon Langley, a great prototypical corner, has got all the length and speed in the world, great ball skills, but definitely a project. But will be a core special teams player and also has value as a return man. So you got to like these guys and their upside. So I'm for the most part happy with what John Elway and company accomplished in day 2. Something that I can't say that I've had that same feeling in years past. It seems, like I said, John Elway's really dropped the ball in years past in the second and third round, and hopefully this year won't be the same case. So that's it for me, guys. Leave me a comment below. What do you think of these players? DeMarcus Walker, again, defensive end out of Florida State. Carlos Henderson, wide receiver out of Louisiana Tech. And Brendan Langley, defensive back out of Lamar. How do you like these guys? How do you think they'll fit in with Denver? And what do you expect from them as rookies in the upcoming 2017 NFL season?